evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Esty Hess,
And I'm Dr. Ann Kirsch.
and we are doing something a little bit different today. We are operating from two different venues, but we are still having our wonderful podcast on and off the spectrum. And tonight's special guest is someone who really has touched our hearts by the book that he has written. It is Rabbi Yisroel Bernath, who is a Chabad rabbi in Montreal, Canada. And Rabbi, thank you, because I know it's quite a bit later on your end, on the eastern side of the of the coast, not necessarily the United States. And his book, his wonderful, wonderful book, is called The Forgiveness Experiment. And I'm going to give a nutshell synopsis of it, but I'm going to ask you to explain much, much more. I will tell you that Ann and I, before we just started the program this evening, somewhat joked with you, but not really. I personally have purchased multiple copies of your book to hand out to both clients and to friends, because I think your book has so many important messages to teach. And I can't thank you enough for the wisdom that is so succinctly put together in your book. But in essence, and tell me if I capture this correctly, what would happen if you could forgive an entity, a person who has done you harm, whether that person is alive or has passed, whether it's God, whether it's yourself? How much more room would you have in your brain if you weren't renting that space out for free? And then what kind of things could you let go of, which we'll talk about towards the end of your book, which I think is marvelous in terms of these self-perceived kind of like characterizations of who you need to be in the world that you can let go of if you start this forgiveness experiment, and basically be kind to yourself. Did I catch it even remotely right?
Incredible.
Okay.
I'm just honored to be here and honored to have this support from both of you. It's really
Oh,
special. This was never supposed to be a book. And so to see it land in the world, in your hearts, the way that it has, it just brings me so much. It's really nourishing, really.
okay. Well, we are thrilled to have you here, but I have to follow up with that statement. What did you mean this was never supposed to be a book?
Right.
So you may notice, and you introduced me as rabbi, which is a title that I often use, but it's not the only title that I'm called. And I chose to not put rabbi on the cover of this book because this book was my own process, my own work. And I had been doing this work for a number of years. And at some point, I started teaching it. And I saw
Mm.
how I saw how it landed for so many people. And I said, you know what? If if people can benefit from it, I will take this, all of my notes, and kind of put them together and create a book that could, I hope, I mean, obviously it's a self-help book like any other, and somebody can read it and learn from it, or to use it as a course, use it as a journal, use it the way that I used it with the exercises, with the processing. There's even times I think I did something that I've never seen in a book before. I asked people to pause at
Mm.
moments. I don't like to spoon feed process.
Mm-hmm.
And so just to pause and ask the questions the way I asked them,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe sit with them for a week or two or three the way that I did. I mean, that's my hope, at least.
Could you go over some of the questions that made you, and I know it started with your own journey about a time when you were assaulted, I believe physically, and the process it took for you to come to terms and forgive that experience, the individuals who were involved, and the kinds of questions you had to ask yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah. I realized at some point that I was carrying a lot around. People would call me an old soul when I was young, and it
Mm.
bothered me. At first I said, "Oh, that's nice." And then I realized maybe that's not. Maybe I should be a young soul because I'm young. Why should I be an old soul? And realized that I was very heavy. I was burdened by a lot of things and a lot of experiences and things that had happened to me. And it was this process of looking at them and being honest and rolling in the mud a little and allowing myself to live in a space that maybe I was running away from and asking and challenging and then letting go and then creating lots of different processes in the way. So I mean there were so many questions. I'm not sure which question you want me to start with, or maybe even I can start with an experiment that I did to
Oh,
answer that question.
Sure. Sure.
that would be great.
Let's start with the experiment.
Yes.
So one of the most profound experiments was a reframing experiment that I'd never seen it. Maybe it exists somewhere. So maybe perhaps you can tell me. Um, I will say, I'll just give a caveat before I explain this, is that when a wound is fresh, we might not be ready to look at lessons, and that's okay. There's a stage where we just have to feel the hurt and acknowledge it. But there then comes a point, maybe after the initial shock, after the grief, where we have to face a choice. Do I live in this chapter forever? Or can I carry this painful event forward in a healthier way? Can I learn from it? Is there something here that is a gift that's been given to me that I can learn from? And it was hard because I don't want to let go of the story. And so realizing that changing the story doesn't mean pretending that it didn't happen. It means finding a place for that chapter in my life where I no longer want it to control the narrative. I want to take back the pen and allow myself to control the narrative. For example, maybe when I was younger, I didn't have the wisdom to understand and the time, I guess, to understand what that lesson was. But now as I'm older, I'm the adult now, and I can decide whether I want to tell the story through the child. For example, a great grievance that you spoke about when I was shot at when I was 15 years old. But I'm not 15 years old anymore. So I can allow the 15-year-old to control that narrative, or I can allow the adult 43-year-old to control that narrative. So this is not the experiment I did for that. That was a very big one, and I can talk about that. I call it the letter that you'll never send. This experiment was one that I did for a lot of. It was the most common one that I did for grievances. I called it the multiple drafts method.
Mm.
So think of a story that you've been telling yourself about a hurt. I call that the first draft. So it could read something like, I'm just kind of play with this and
Sure.
narrate it out loud.
Yes.
I was doing well until name the person. This person came along and messed up everything. And because of such and such person, I lost this thing and I will never be able to. And this is the narrative and the story that I've been telling. Now, you can write that down. And I really do. I love the pen to paper. I mean, you can say it, by the way, just kind of talking
Yes.
it out, taking it out of thought and putting it actually into speech is powerful. I think even more powerful is to actually write it down.
Absolutely. Yes.
And I encourage just kind of writing it down in its emotional rawness. That's just draft one. Just write the story down as you've been telling it for as many years as you've been telling it, and it could be many years.
Right.
Likely, that draft will be written by your pain. Then I invite you to ask a question. What would you change in this story to make it more empowering for the main character, you? And then write a second draft that could sound something like, yes, I was hurt when she did that. It set me back for a while, but it also forced me to and start looking for the silver lining, find a new path, learn to stand up for myself, seek better friendships. And in the end, I was able to grow. And I think this is a gentler telling, one that acknowledges resilience and possibly that there is a silver lining, that there could be good that comes out of a very difficult situation. And also, it could say that maybe that this was needed as a detour in my life, and it'll make sense later. Then there's a draft 3, where I ask you to imagine yourself in 10 years as the adult. And you look back with the wisdom, with the hindsight, and maybe having seen more of the ripple effects. What would draft 3 sound like? Maybe it would sound something like, in retrospect, that painful episode was a turning point. Those were my triggers, but my triggers became my medicine.
Oh, yes. Yes.
That's such a powerful piece, because, and I'll reference back to what I mentioned at the beginning of tonight's podcast. For me, one of the most powerful chapters is the last chapter, where you say, by doing this process, you can change who you have thought you had to be, whether it is the person who is the perpetrator, or the perpetual victim, or the perpetual helper, and be more in charge of your life.
That was probably the greatest breakthrough for me in the whole process. I actually added that chapter once the book was finished. It was amazing. It was introduced to me by a good friend, a coach, Omar Pinto, and it just clicked. And he introduced the work of Dr. Stephen Karpman, who talks about the drama triangle. And Dr. Karpman, in the drama triangle, he says that the victim, the perpetrator, and the rescuer are part of a triangle, which means there's no victim that can exist without a perpetrator, and no perpetrator that can exist without a victim. And the rescuer is interesting because it may be the rescuer that exists or the rescuer that we're waiting for that never comes. But they're part of the same thing. I used to think that the opposite of victim was perpetrator. Like they were the opposites. But then I found out they're actually parallels.
Yeah.
And they could even be the same person. And then asking a question that comes out of Dr. Karpman's work, which is, what would my life look like if I wasn't a victim? And I think this is such a powerful question in our society right now, because we're in a world where there's the victim Olympics. Who can get the gold medal? Who can be the biggest victim? Who could get the most sympathy from a world that is so loving and so kind? So we need somewhere to put our love and our kindness. And the easiest place to do it is in this poor victim. Oh, please, what can I do to help the less fortunate? So that we, in a world that is compassionate and loving, we have actually created the Victim Olympics.
Right.
And so people want to get that gold medal because they get the most sympathy. Now, if I had to ask the question, and I myself, and there's a lot of reasons for it, we can talk about it. I'm here with two doctors. I think that you probably know much more than me about why people are going to victimize themselves. But what was fascinating to me was pulling myself out of it and ask a question. What is the opposite of victimhood?
Mm.
If
That's
it's not the
interesting.
perpetrator, what is it?
So what did you come up with?
So I came up with, in the work of Cartman and the work of this really the incredible author, David Emerald, the creator. They call it the creator
Mm.
because I'm a rabbi, put on my rabbi hat for a minute. I don't like creator, I like co-creator, that God gives us the ability to co-create our realities, our lives with God. That's what free choice is. No, I won't get philosophical on you tonight.
Yes, but I love that. That's just how I speak a lot. So I appreciate that.
So we're co-creators in our lives. And the opposite of victim is you can be a co-creator. You get to decide.
Right.
You're the director. You get to decide what is the next step. And there's so much in front of us. So many options. The world is our, I'll use a Jewish term, kosher term, gefilte fish.
Mhm.
The world is there. There's so many opportunities and abilities. So now here's the question. If the opposite of victim is the co-creator, what happens to my perpetrator? Because if there's no victim, there's no perpetrator. So what does my perpetrator turn into? My perpetrator turns into a challenger.
Mm.
They're there for me as the mirror so
Mm.
that I can see the potential. They're there as my medicine. And so those triggers, they exist as a gift for me. And then, of course, the rescuer becomes the therapist.
It's so interesting because it makes me think of a personal message that I learned early on as a student, that sometimes the worst teachers were ultimately our best teachers,
Mm.
right? Because you learn quickly what not to do.
Mm.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. And I am so enthralled by the message of empowerment that I think eludes a lot of people who, for all kinds of reasons, as you put it in this sort of victim society, get stuck in this place. I will also tell you what struck with me was that there were lots of different categories of forgiveness that you could approach, whether it was an entity, another person who, like the individual who shot at you when you were 15, someone who was no longer alive, God. Do you want to forgive God for whatever injuries that you imagine have been placed upon you? And then probably just as large, do you want to forgive yourself?
That was the hardest chapter.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
the hardest work.
That's the hardest work as a therapist. That's probably 90% of the work that I do with my clients is helping them to understand that they're not alone, but that the work they do can feel very, very lonely. I am there as a guide. I am listening. I hear what you say. It's happened earlier today. I hear what you say. Now, what is the next step?
Right.
Do you sink back into the upset, or do you find a way to stay still? Which I love that. Just stay still and breathe and feel. And if the feelings become too big, do something else for a minute and then just breathe. And because I've been meditating and praying for 30 years or some, I teach my clients how to meditate because I believe that in that space of quiet, we find our answers. And so reading your book and finding that what I've been doing by putting together a lot of different teachers in my life, you've put together in a book.
Mm-hmm.
You've set it on the page. I so agree. As you're speaking, I'm taking notes because I take notes. I take copious notes because that's how my brain receives the messages. That's how I can tell people what I believe they're not seeing. And this is what you're saying.
Yeah.
I have an additional question. You said to forgive yourself was the toughest chapter.
Yeah.
Why do you believe that ultimately forgiving yourself is the greatest challenge?
Mm-hmm.
Every time I look at myself, my nose gets in the way. It's hard to look inside.
Mm.
It's hard to think of ourselves. It's easier to shift blame,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, completely. Absolutely.
especially when it comes to people who have hurt us. I mean, they're really good markers for shifting blame, and the pain is unavoidable, but the suffering. I think about, and I use this example in the book, like you get up in the middle of the night and the lights are off and you want to go to the bathroom and you walk by and you stub your toe on the couch.
Yep.
It hurts.
Mm-hmm.
The pain is unavoidable. But then you say, why does this always happen to me?
Mm-hmm.
That's the suffering. And
Mm-hmm.
that's optional if
But
we want it to be.
it's the blame shifting too. You yell at the couch. You
Yes,
yell,
exactly.
you're yelling at the couch. Why are you always here? I've done that. The second time I broke my toe, my little toe, many years ago on the same door jamb to the same bathroom, I had to stop. It was probably like the messages of hurt that you speak about. I had to stop and really say, literally on the spot, and say, in the pain, why do I keep doing this? What is the message of this? Why?
Yeah.
And I
That's
had to sit with that a long time before I could come up with any sort of a reason because it seemed so irrational to
that's
me.
hard and really messy. That's really messy. I have a blooper reel of moments in my life that ambush me all the time. When I'm driving, 3 o'clock in the morning, like, the thoughtless comment
Mm-hmm.
that hurt
Yep.
a friend. I realize that maybe not everyone remembers everything, but I somehow remember all of these different things. I remember the boy in my class in fourth grade that borrowed 35 cents from me and never gave it back to me.
Yeah.
I have
Right.
a whole blooper reel. And they're little minor things, but they've taken up a lot of space.
That's
But
right.
you,
And they
but you,
build, they
but you,
pile
And
up.
it's
yeah,
interesting how that file stayed in your brain, and I do wonder the perpetual purpose because I know far less perpetrators as much as I know many more victims. People who are unable, unwilling, not interested, not capable,
can
or maybe have yet to try
I
to
think it's a choice that they make.
to
This is our
to
work.
move out of this victim's place.
can
Yes,
can can I lean into this and maybe push this a little forward?
Yes,
please.
The hardest realization for me in this process, well, the obvious realization for me in this process was that I've been hurt
mm,
and that a majority or maybe all of the adult world has also been hurt, that I'm not alone in this process, that
Mm.
almost every adult in the world has been hurt by somebody. But the hardest realization for me is that I've hurt others.
Mm.
Wow.
That I used to think of myself as the perpetual victim, but I'm also a perpetrator.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wait, I'm writing. Yes, we are. I am.
You are a perpetrator consciously, would you
It
say?
does
Does it,
probably
does it
not.
maybe,
I mean,
or maybe it doesn't matter?
we walk through the world. I could have just not seen the person behind me and cut them off.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I didn't do it. I definitely didn't do it maliciously. I definitely don't walk around the world maliciously
Truly,
perpetrating.
truly,
But it does happen because I don't live on an island alone. And maybe the old joke that if I did live on an island alone, I'd still have a synagogue I didn't go to.
got
Yes, my grandfather said that to me. Yes.
it.
Yes.
So, so by doing the work to, at the very least, start forgiving yourself, you create a whole new space to identify with.
Yeah.
Wow.
And noticing.
Yeah.
If somebody asked me what is the first step and the most important step, I would say just notice. Because once you start noticing, it doesn't stop. The ball rolls. And you just start noticing it everywhere. The victimhood, the perpetrators, the people who are telling the same story. I mean, how many people you just sit somewhere and you're a therapist and people are coming to you with but let's say you're not a therapist and people are just telling you their life's problems.
Right.
You're sitting on the plane, you're sitting on the train, and all of a sudden you're hearing everyone's life. The world is looking to release, to unload, and just noticing around us.
Right.
Yes. Yes. The world is looking to release. And one of the things that I'm feeling right now is we're talking about something very, very powerful. This is very deep, but we're laughing. There's a joyousness to life, to what you're saying with a smile, with this laughter that you have, that sometimes I don't feel. Sometimes I feel lately the pain, but I do feel like I want to laugh much more than I want to cry.
Mm.
That's why laughter is so powerful. I was sitting I don't, I'm not a rabbi of a big synagogue. Like I don't have this big pulpit. And so I was sitting on the dais. I read about it in the book, subbing for a rabbi of a big synagogue here. And it was a bar mitzvah. And there was a 16-year-old young lady that was giving a speech at her brother's bar mitzvah. And I was right behind her because I was on the dais behind her. So all I could see was her back. And the entire time there was this sound coming from her mouth as she was speaking, and I couldn't tell if she was laughing or crying
Mm.
because from behind her it sounded the same.
Mm.
And I was just totally enthralled with this. And it kept on happening as she spoke for at least 10 or 15 minutes. The whole time, every word that came out of her mouth was like this kind of probably a giggly, but I couldn't tell from behind her whether she was laughing or crying. And I realized that they're both the same thing. They're just two different forms of a release
Yeah.
that we so much need in this world.
I want to make a slightly different mention because our podcast is geared for people who have received a medical or psychiatric diagnosis or have encountered a life-altering event possibly and are looking for guidance and so forth. Then this is certainly a very large piece of this kind of processing. But sometimes, for whatever reason, you are at, what is put in front of you is suddenly a life-altering experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's natural to feel victimized, lick your wounds and try to figure out what the heck is going up, because suddenly up is down and down is up. And especially if with some of our more serious patients, more seriously impacted patients, where life continues to be hard on a daily basis. I think it's hard to step out and do the kind of processing work that you are describing because you're just into survival mode, you know?
Good point. Yes, we encounter that all the time. So,
Yeah.
how do you suggest helping someone come out of survival mode and into their life?
My heart is full. It's very hard.
Yeah,
It's hard to, when you're treading water, it's hard to be able to see anything beyond that.
Right.
absolutely.
When you're just in survival, it's hard. And that's why I think of so many people who lived before us who are in survival. And I am so grateful that somehow I was able to pull myself out.
Mm. Mhm.
I did pull myself out, though,
Yes, I hear that.
while I was in the middle of treading water.
Mhm.
I hear that.
And
Yeah.
I'm just processing it and trying to see if I have advice for it. It's painful. It's really painful. But we only live one life.
Mm.
And the way we live it is our choice.
You know, I'm going to give a metaphor that has helped me in real time, and then what we do clinically. So I'm a very strong swimmer. And one day, I love the waters of Hawaii, and I was swimming, and I just wasn't paying attention. And I got drifted out into a place where it was a little more dangerous because suddenly I wasn't really seeing land so clearly. And I realized I had a very big choice to make because I could go one direction or the other, and that could mean success or not in terms of, my physical safety. And all I wanted to do was stand on a rock for just a moment to get my bearings, to kind of decide, where am I? And lo and behold, the heavens opened and there was some kind of big rock wherever I was in this ocean. Just enough for me to kind of go, okay, all right, where am I? Where's the sky? Where's the wind? Here, there, boom, I know where I need to go. I think that that's our job, that the helpers have become the therapists as were. I think we provide the touchstone, I hope, the base, whether it is clergy, whether it is a good friend, whether it's a listening ear, whether I hope it's people who are watching and hearing this podcast, to have a place to stand for just a moment, to get their bearings, and okay, now what? Okay. Because I think that's what you need in the middle of a storm. You need to be able to stand or have someone help you stand.
Yes.
And then go forward with this great map that you've written, Rabbi. You know.
Yeah. I think to add to just for a second to what you're saying, Esti, is I find that I often will say to a patient, do you have anyone that helps hold you up? Because they're with you during this. And they often say no.
Mm-hmm.
And then I say, I'm here,
Right.
but I'm here. And I am staying with you. I'm holding you. And the look on their face is at first shock because they're not used to somebody. A lot of people are not used to hearing someone say, I'm standing with you. And then a smile. I get it. Okay, you're here. They may test the fact whether I'm there or not. especially if they're a teenager. But they learn. They learn they can trust. And trust is a big part of your book. Trusting yourself, trusting others, taking that quiet moment, which I'm a huge believer in, but trust.
Rabbi, we could go on and on
Yes.
about this wonderful book. I'm going to put out again. It's The Forgiveness Experiment. It is available through, is it Amazon, or how do you, if someone wants to purchase this book, Rabbi, what would you suggest?
I've purchased multiple copies on Amazon.
Right.
Available on Amazon, on from better bookstores. It's around. I hope it's not. It's there's an Audible and a Spotify audiobook that I actually read myself, which is very
Oh,
my heart.
That's great. That's great. Oh,
wonderful.
that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So we want to encourage. We generally don't solicit products on our podcast, but when we have such a wonderful tool as you're providing to help with resilience for our viewership, I want to be able, both Anna and I want to be able to promote this. So we want to thank you for the gift of your text and the greater gift of being on our show this evening.
And
Absolutely.
so
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. I want to tell you that I am Dr. Esty Hess,
And I'm Dr. Ann Kirsch.
and this has been another episode of On and Off the Spectrum podcast. If tonight's show touched your heart, please let us know. Please go ahead and follow us. We are located on many of the social media outlets. Certainly, oh my goodness, you know them better than I did to reach out. But if you yourself think that you can add to this conversation and would like to be a guest on our show, please also do reach out. This is, again, On and Off the Spectrum podcast. We want to thank you. And again, Rabbi Yisroel Bernath, please, it's been such a pleasure and an honor to have you with us tonight.
you too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.